Hi guys, welcome back to episode 2 of Scalability. And well, I know, I guess today, this episode, we are probably going to be covering some Docker Compose and other container platforms, I guess. So, as you can see, I currently have myself open a terminal and my Docker desktop. So, the last episode I conducted on Linux, but I guess Docker desktop is more intuitive and you can see what's going on. So, we're going to use that instead. So, what is Docker Compose? Docker Compose is simply a platform for you to write files that you want to specify to be deployed under Docker. So in this episode, I guess we will be creating a Docker Compose stack to be able to deploy a WordPress instance along with a fully fledged database backing it at the same time. So I know Docker Compose isn't completely scalable, and those of you who are experts will definitely understand this, but I guess we have to start from somewhere. So yeah, so let's get right into this. So first, we are probably going to create the Docker Compose file. So the file that specifies Docker Compose specification is dockercompose.yaml. So as you can see, docker-compose.yml, we're going to create that file, and we are going to open that file in VS Code. So yeah, let's wait for that to launch, and there we go. We have, let's allow that to access our documents. So now we have opened up a Docker Compose file, and what we are actually going to do is let's go ahead and install the extension. So I guess if it prompts you to install the extension, it might be worth installing it because it's actually pretty cool. Now we're going to allow ourselves in a trusted window so we can actually start working on our Docker Compose file. So the first thing that goes in any Docker Compose file is the version. So we're going to specify the version, and we should probably be using 3.7. So in case you don't know what the Docker Compose versions are, I believe docker.com has a very good reference on this. So let's go to that page. And you can just go to this page, docs.docker.com. Link will be in the description. So as you can see, we have this will be the version. So we're going to choose 3.7. I guess you can put 3.8 if you want. I guess let's just go with 3.8 because it's the latest version. Now, every Docker Compose file has the most important thing in the Docker Compose file is the services section. So services basically just specifies what containers in a sense you want to launch under this Docker Compose instance. So for example, if you have a front-end application, that's a service. If you have a database, that's a service. If you have Redis or Memcached or hack your web browser, that's a service. So we want to launch the service in the services section. So every single service will have a name, and let's say we would like to deploy our blog on Docker Compose. So what we're going to do is we're going to deploy a service called blog. And we're going to also, we need our database for our blog. So I guess we could call it a database. And so we have our services, blog, and database. So now we need to go ahead and fill in the information. So how does Docker know, what do we want to deploy under this blog? We need to give it an image. So we're going to go specify image, and we can specify the WordPress image because WordPress is a great blogging software. I suppose a lot of people use it. So here's how you find an image. So we can just go to Docker Hub, and we can look for WordPress. And we should be able to find the official image for WordPress, which we will go ahead and use. So as you can see, it says copy and paste to pull this image. So this is actually what you want to copy paste, the WordPress there. So the image we want is WordPress. And I guess we will be installing it under I guess for this tutorial, we'll be simply launching it with a web server. There are ways to do it without launching a web server, but we will not go into those right now. That's for a more advanced episode. So we're going to go ahead and pick a tag. So in the last episode, I discussed about how tag is how a Docker container tag is used to label the container's I guess version, I guess. So in this case, it does actually use a version. So what we'll be using is the 5.9 Apache. So we're going to specify 5.9 Apache. So what this tells Docker is that it wants to download this specific version of the WordPress image. And now I guess that technically actually consists of a full Docker Compose setup. But here's the thing. You might lose data if you just saw it like that, because when you pull down Docker Compose file, it will actually stop this and delete all your data, and that's not nice. So we might want to persist the volume, but I will go into that later. Let us talk about the database now. So obviously WordPress, I believe, uses MySQL or MariaDB. So we're actually going to launch a MariaDB. So image MariaDB colon 10.7.1. So let us fire up our terminal. And if we can actually deploy this right now with Docker Compose up. So Docker Compose up simply just downloads the images and actually starts them up for you. So as you can see, we are currently downloading images, and so as you can see, the database seems to be crashed. So we managed to get one of them start, and as you can see, exited code 1. So that's because this MariaDB container actually requires you to specify some other details. So if you go to the reference page for like, and we might want to specify the MySQL root password. So as you can see, so we're gonna just copy paste this. So you can see it says that you need to specify one of MariaDB root password, MariaDB allow empty root password, MariaDB random root password. So in this case, since we forgot to specify the root password, the database does not actually allow us to launch. So we're gonna go ahead and specify this. So this is what we call an environment variable. So as you know, I hope everyone knows what an environment variable is by now. If you don't, go ahead and Google what that is. But basically, this specifies that the MariaDB root password environment variable in the container will be set to this value. So in this case, I'm just gonna call it YouTube because it's funny, and everyone does that. So now we are able to access our database. Now the database is able to launch. So if I actually run Docker Compose up, you will see that the MariaDB database is actually able to launch perfectly fine. And so as you can see, and it has been launched. So the database is now ready, as you can see. And this is also ready. We're now actually going to make this blog available for us to access on our local domain. So what we're going to do is we're going to specify ports. And in this case, the port definition is host, and the host followed by the internal container port. So in this case, the Apache server, Apache is a web server, by the way, in case you didn't know, the Apache server is running on port 80 and allowing HTTP traffic to port 80 in the container. So what we want to do is actually expose this port 80 in the container to my current computer's port at 8080. So if we can actually kill this Docker Compose, we're going to do Docker Compose up. And we're just going to specify a blog. So if you run Docker Compose up blog. So if you write Docker Compose up just blog, it actually specifies that I only want to launch blog service. So we're just going to do Docker Compose up blog. And as you can see, it has launched it. And if we head over to localhost 8080, I should be able to visit this. As you can see, we are able to get into the WordPress installation page. But here's the thing. So let's go blah, blah, blah. And we are actually unable to fill in the database host and the username and password because we haven't connected our database service to our blog. So in this case, we need to create a Docker network. So we're going to go ahead and create our network. So our database and our blog can communicate with each other. So we're just going to create networks, and let's just call this the blog network. Right? So so this is how you specify network. So it's not under services, it's a whole section by itself. So we created a network named blog network. Now this does nothing by itself. We actually need to tell the containers and the services rather to connect to this network. So how are we going to tell them to connect to this network? It's simple. We just specify networks, and we're going to specify blog network. So very helpfully, VS Code has told me that give me the exact format. So all we need to do is this is just a simply array, and we specify the name of the network, blog network here, and we want to connect our database to this network too, so we can access it. So we're going to do blog network. And now if we actually go ahead and kill this, and we do Docker Compose up, so this starts everything, and if we refresh WordPress setup config page, we can actually create. So we're going to use root and YouTube as the password, and the database host. So in this case, since we created a network linking both of them together, the database host will actually just be the name of the service. So we can literally just put in the name database here. So the name of the service, that will be your IP address in a sense, the host name of the container to connect to it. So if we submit this, we will find that, oh right, yeah, so that's the issue. So I believe we did not create the WordPress database. So we actually do need to create the database. So let's see. So we just need to specify the MariaDB database we created. So again, environment variable. Let's create the database called WordPress, and I guess why not? It's probably a better practice to create it like this. And MariaDB. So we just specify password with WordPress, so we can just create this. So the database name when we start the MariaDB image, we will create the database WordPress with the username WordPress with the password WordPress, and we are connecting it to the blog network, and we are connecting the blog service, which is running a WordPress image, to the blog network as well. So we can actually start this. So if we go ahead and run this, Docker Compose up, and we go ahead and hit try again here. So we just hit username WordPress, password WordPress, and database host database. So we're just gonna submit this, and if you find, oh, that's weird. Oh, ew. Okay, just give me a second. All right, so I just logged in the root password. I assumed that the database and didn't get created. Yeah, but it's a bad idea to use the root password to log in, but in this example, I guess it's fine. So as you can see, we are able to actually install the WordPress install. So, and we're gonna go do that. Example test at example.com. And we're gonna ignore this. Install WordPress, and there we go. So we can actually log in with YouTube. Right, so now we are actually able to log into the WordPress instance. As you can see, we currently have the Docker Compose stack deployed. But here's a problem. If I kill this and restart it, our data will be gone. So let us go ahead and do that. So we're gonna stop it, and we're gonna do Docker Compose up, and oh, that didn't delete it. Okay, so yeah, that oops, I guess. Okay, yeah, so when we run, so here's the thing. The problem is that now we have stored the data in the container. So if we run Docker Compose down and we delete the containers, here's what's gonna happen. We have lost our WordPress installation. So how do we deal with this? The answer is creating a volume. A volume is simply think of it as like a virtual hard drive for the Docker container. So in this case, I guess we will go through the bind mount first. So in this case, we will want to let's set up a bind mount. So a bind mount simply is what it does is it's what it means. So basically, let's say we have a folder in our container /app, and we want to access the files of this folder inside the container out on our current machine. We will create a bind mount. So in this case, WordPress, I believe, stores its files under var www.html. So we're actually going to go ahead and look at the reference for that just so we don't lose it. So I believe WordPress. So it's an important thing to do when you're looking at stuff. You need to look at the reference. Yeah, so so var www.html. So here's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna create a directory, make directory WordPress data. We're gonna bind the WordPress data, the var www.html into our WordPress data directory. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna specify volumes as such. I'm gonna do /. So as you can see, VS Code is very helpful. You just see what it did there. It did host path, container path, mode. So in this case, we're going to be using host path, container path, or volume name. But in this case, we're going to be using a host path. So what we're going to do is we're going to bind mount the directory WordPress data, which you can see is actually living on my current computer. And we're going to bind it into var www.html. And in this case, what we're going to see is if we run docker compose up, okay, and docker will be right to my computer. So so run docker compose up, and as you can see, the WordPress data is actually being created right here in my WordPress data directory. So if we go ahead and log into the WordPress page, oops, that might be an issue. Oh yeah, it's not done copying the WordPress data yet. So once it's done, and I should be able to, there we go. So now we are able to load the WordPress page. So if you just give it a while to load, and there we go, we are back into the WordPress setup. So in this case, if we set up our database, so now we've actually managed to store our WordPress instance details on. So now if we kill this and delete the containers by running docker compose down, all our data is still going to be saved. So actually, if you notice, we have not persisted the data for our database. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to persist the data for our database too, and we are going to create another directory. So if I can just create a new, there we go. So we just make the db data. WordPress db data, and we see it. And now if we go ahead and we can go ahead and kill this, and we're gonna quickly bind mount our data inside there. So we're gonna do volumes /WordPress db data, and we bind mount it into var lib mysql, which is where the database is being stored. Yes, so now we've cleared up everything. Let's run our docker compose command this time. So actually, I'm going to show you something. We can run up-d. So what up-d is that it actually detaches the containers and pushes them into the background. So we are free to interact the terminal afterwards, as opposed to with Docker Compose up, where it leaves the terminal focused. So you can't actually do anything to the terminal. So we're going to run Docker Compose up-d. So if we run Docker Compose logs log, we can actually see the logs. So it's going to go ahead and copy all the files in, and we can go Docker Compose logs database. So again, that's just the service name. So it's just going to go ahead and copy all the files in. It's going to take a while. And okay, yeah, so WordPress has just finished instantiating itself. And if we log refresh here, we're going to have to do the installation process from the start. Okay, so now let's watch. Okay, so now we're gonna do a thing where we run Docker Compose down, and it's gonna stop all our databases and stuff, and that's fine. So now we can access our website. So talking to you again for post-processing, we'll just bring the website back up with Compose up-g. Hi, so this is me. I'm talking to you post-processing because my audio cut off just now. So what I'm doing here is actually I'm going to specify a depends on property. So what the depends on property does is that it will not start the blog until the database has been started, because it is important that we actually have the database running before we start the blog, else the blog will not work properly. So that's just a little thing to take note of. Yep, and back to the video. So as you can see, now we've done that. So we're actually going to stop the blog real quick. And we're waiting for the blog to stop. Now we bring the blog back up with up-d, and so if we go have a look here, we can actually see that the blog is working as intended. Yeah, so thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something today. Stay tuned for the next episode and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.